Hi everybody, and welcome back to Privilege Pulse. I hope that you guys are staying hydrated, that you're staying intentional about what you're feeding yourself, both mentally, spiritually, and so forth. I want to first shout out the new subscribers to the channel. Really excited to have you guys here. Continue to like and, get notifications to videos. I am going to start off this video a little different, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit too. So moving forward with Privilege Pulse, I first want to level set on what is the purpose of this channel? Who is the audience of this channel? Because that's really important very early on for me to clarify that, so that moving forward, the videos kind of all make sense and sit within that field house of what I described. So the first, point of this channel is to empower you with your own beauty and the privilege that comes with it. I think a lot of times the rhetoric around pretty privilege is it's a bad thing to have it and you should be hiding, you should not be using it, you should feel bad for having it. And oftentimes that is the stance that a lot of women will take because they feel bad about hurting another woman. But you owning your beauty is not discounting their own beauty. That person has to look themselves in the mirror and find out what they love about them, so much so that they're not so intimidated by you. But if you loving you and you loving your beauty is going to cause them so much grief and grief and issues, then that's on them. That literally has nothing to do with you. That's a personal choice that they've chosen to take, but it's not your responsibility to join in on that shame and feeling bad and all that bullshit because you're pretty and they feel like they aren't. They put you on a pedestal because they think your characteristics and how you look and everything is the standard. And they wish they looked like you, but they don't. So now they're making you feel bad that they don't look like you. Sounds crazy. But this is literally the logic of some of these people. It's like they make you feel bad for how you came out or how you look or possibly how you take care of yourself. Because a lot of things too, as you get older, it is just a sense of how do you maintain yourself and your body and your health. And it's going to show up in your skin. It's going to show up in your body shape, your weight. All that stuff is going to add up. But with this channel, I am empowering you to own it and use it to get to where you want to be rather than feeling bad for it and not going anywhere. Because let's be real, you can sit in the house all day and feel bad that, oh my God, I'm so pretty. I can't go out with these people because all these men are going to give me all this attention and going to get me drinks and it's going to make them feel bad. And you're going to always have a miserable time. You're never going to want to go out. You're never going to want to do things. That's a very extreme version. But I'm giving you an example. That's something I've also experienced is people feeling weird when we're out and about or commenting oh yeah, we'll get free drinks. If she's coming, let's go. And it's just no, it's okay for them to use your beauty for something. But if you were to use it, you would be a bad guy. So on this channel, we are not bad guys for using our beauty to get what we want. If you believe that your morals and values are in place where they need to be spiritually, then you can use your beauty to get whatever you want within that and not feel bad about it. You shouldn't feel bad about it. Because going nowhere is not the goal. On this channel, all the information, all the topics, all the game, all the stuff that I'm sharing with you guys, it is to elevate you. I want you to take it and use it to make yourself stronger. I want you to take it and use it to give yourself the responsibility of elevating your life. We're not on this channel just to rant and vent about how people get upset about women with pretty privilege or black women with pretty privilege or light-skinned black women with pretty privilege. I'm not here to just complain about that. I'm 26 years old. I honestly care less about people still being in that field house. I'm now at the actionable point in my life where I'm okay, what am I going to do with that information? How is it going to elevate me? So what I'm telling you is not information for you to just hold and use and sit on. Maybe you'll use it in a week. Maybe you'll use it in 6 months. But this is information that I want you to sit with, reflect with, and use appropriately to elevate you and push you to where you want to go in life. Because other people are going to happily get to where they need to be if they had exactly what they believe so strongly that you have, that if they had it, they would have an easy way to go through life. But for you, because you're being made to feel bad because you have it and they don't, you're not doing anything. No, we are not stagnant. We are always elevating. We're always pushing ourselves. And I'm always pushing the beautiful women that are next to me, my friends that I have, where I know that there's no jealousy or envy. I'm pushing them to be the best versions of themselves, and vice versa. They're pushing me. Never competing with them, but we're pushing ourselves in our own lanes to get to where we need to go. And if we got to use our beauty to do it, we will. That is how this world works. Beauty is social capital, and people can continue to lie to themselves and say it isn't. But you wouldn't be so upset about pretty people getting things if you didn't think that our beauty got us those things. I'm not saying that that is the only thing that got us there, because there are very talented and hardworking, pretty privileged people. But oftentimes people just look at your beauty and say that is the only way and the only reason you got somewhere in life. So if they already think that, why don't you just use that to your advantage? Why don't you just get whatever you want? So this is about empowerment. And lastly, I want you to realize that owning you doesn't mean you're discounting anyone else. Owning your beauty doesn't mean you're discounting anyone else's beauty. That's not the MO of this channel. Me saying I'm pretty, looking at myself in the mirror, me gassing myself, does not take away you being able to gas you. We can all be pretty. We can all win. I don't live in a scarcity mindset where only one of us can be the baddest in the room. Like, we need to grow up. Like, it's a billion people in this world. If you really think you are the only pretty people on this planet, the only pretty person on this planet, you're crazy. There are multiple. Honestly, some people have doppelgangers. I've seen people who look like me, a couple features off, like maybe a couple shades off, or like their eyebrows are different. I'm like, God damn, that could possibly be my twin. Like, we have so many humans on this planet that it's impossible for somebody to think that they are the only pretty person. But what brings out real beauty is just like owning your shit and not caring what anyone else has to think about it. For real. So keep that in mind. But when you discount yourself, you discount everything that matters. You come into this world alone and you're going to leave it alone. And in between that time of when you are born and you die, it is up to you to choose how you're going to live. If you're going to live that life scared of your own beauty, if you're going to live that life hiding away from the world because you're afraid of how you're going to be perceived, you're going to be perceived as arrogant or stuck up or standoffish, or, oh, she thinks she's better than everyone because she's walking in the room smiling and she's not being fazed by me and my envy or my jealousy. Hell yeah, I'm not going to be fazed by you, because what you have going on with you and your internal battle has nothing to do with me. You're projecting. Me loving me does not take away from you. You're simply taking away from yourself because you're so focused on me. Do not discount yourself on this channel. That's not what we're here to do. Any and all information and knowledge I give you, I've vetted it from my own life. I have friends that I also go to pull like topics or things from, and we have these conversations all the time. So like, these are things that other pretty privileged, beautiful women are also going through. So it's not fake. It's not false. It's very real. And the mental impact of you constantly hiding yourself and not owning your beauty can be really detrimental to you enjoying this life that you have. Life is too precious, too wasted, being miserable because other people are miserable about themselves. Simple as that. So I want to go ahead and hop into today's topic. I'm going to be talking about the objectification used against and the assumptions and limited beliefs that people have about pretty women. And the linguistics of this title is very important. Like, objectifications used against. Oftentimes people talk about being objectified. Oh my God, I was objectified. They only see me as my boobs or my butt or like my looks. Okay. There's another layer to that where like they're objectifying you by those objects, and they're also pushing against you, where now they are limiting the direction in which you can go. Follow me here. So when I'm saying objectification used against you, they're going to use this objectification to stop you from being able to force your own will in life. They're going to use this objectification to falsify the beliefs that you might have about yourself. They're going to use this objectification to stop you from believing in you. Just as I talked about, the purpose of this channel overall is to empower you to own your beauty and use it and not lose it. Because you're going to lose it eventually. We all are. But it's really the confidence and stuff that you have inside of you, the discipline that you will never lose if you cultivate it correctly. So who you are is a gift. You need to find out how to cultivate that properly. What do you need to recharge? What do you need to be at peace with self? And sometimes it's going to be that awareness of when things are not right, when people are not treating you right, and you're able to respond properly and have such a peace of mind that you can respond in a way that doesn't send your body into chaos or anxiety. And that's real. Because sometimes, like, if you're not a person who likes confrontation, having to respond to people in a confrontational sense can often send you off. But if you have developed a strong sense of self and you know how to handle these things in a way that you are not going to be shifted at your core, you're gonna do great. You're gonna be great. So yeah, objectification used against, because someone can easily objectify you and it can be a good thing or bad thing, but against implies that it's a bad thing. Okay. And then the assumptions and limited beliefs that people have about pretty women. So assumptions are pretty straightforward. Limited beliefs, these are beliefs that can be inherently good or bad, but they're very limited in window. And I'll jump into this a little more deeply, but just think of, certain beliefs that people might have about pretty people, like the halo effect, where they think that attractive people are naturally good people. They have good morals. I've met plenty of people who are pretty who are terrible people on the inside. They're hideous on the inside. That is one version of a limited belief. People think that if you're pretty, you're naturally a good person. Well, that's bad, because if we're telling people that, we're having people grow up and think that mindset, they're going to think that anyone pretty has their best interests at heart, and it's not at all the case. Everyone's going to push their own will. Everyone has their own agenda anyway. Let's stop pretending like that is not the case, and let's be very honest that is the case. And let's start identifying these behaviors and these actions and these beliefs and appropriately responding in a way that is going to protect us and help us get to where we need to go. So I am going to hop into the outcomes of this video. These are things that I want you guys to leave the video feeling, knowing, or believing. And if you don't, then that's also okay. Like, this is just my ideal goal for my audience, and I want to share that with you so you understand, where I'm coming from, but also just like a high level of, why the video is structured a certain way so that you can really listen and keen into certain details and have those reflective questions at the end for yourself. I want you to have basically a study guide going into these topics so that you're not just listening to me aimlessly talking. You're like, okay, so what do I do with all this? Again, this channel is about elevating you and pushing you and motivating you and giving you the tools to elevate your life. And within each video, I'm going to discuss and highlight what are the outcomes and things that I want you to leave this video with, the tools I want you to leave this video with so that you can do that. Okay? So the first tool that I want you to leave with is the understanding of how this objectification and its associated assumptions can limit the way we live, the way we shine, the way we show up in our relationship with ourselves, with others, in our careers and our goals. The second thing is give you this new knowledge, this new game to alter the way you enter spaces, to be your most confident self, to be your most elegant, most free-flowing version of self that is not limited to the box that others have given you. The limited beliefs and the assumptions that I'm going to talk about, please imagine them as a box that somebody has drawn, and once they see and classify you as pretty, they put you in that box. You are only allowed to live in that box. You are only allowed to behave within the confines of that box or speak within the confines of that box. If you do anything outside of that box to that person who created the box, you are a conundrum. Now you're challenging them. Now they're trying to figure you out. Now you're like, they do all this stuff. But if we remember that humans are very human and we can never be put in a box, then it's a conundrum to you that someone would do that, I'm sure. But many people are going to do this because there have been so many tropes in media and film and music and podcasts and all types of places. You can look at it everywhere where beautiful women, pretty women are carved out a certain way. And so we're perceived a certain way. And this is throughout centuries. This is throughout like decades. And I have examples like, and I'll jump into this, but like stuff like Mystery Inc. Scooby-Doo, like how Velma and Daphne are perceived, how they're presented. Like, that is a show that has been reproduced multiple times, and the way that those two characters have been presented has never changed. Things like Mean Girls, that's had a new movie reboot. The way that those girls were portrayed never changed. Media has a history, has become very skilled at presenting pretty women a certain way and constantly fulfilling these tropes in a way that it makes it difficult for you to be like, pretty women don't fit in that box. If you don't actually know pretty people, you don't actually hang around natural people who aren't actors. So, the other goal of this video is just to like give you the confidence to create your own box, and not even a box. Like, don't make a box, make an open shape where you can be whatever you want, and you can alter the way you may have like dimmed your light. Going back to the first part of why this video is important. Maybe you've dimmed your light, maybe you've stepped away from things, or you've shied away from things because of how others perceive you or other people's projected fears upon you. This video is meant to encourage you to rethink about those things, to reflect on those things, and really dig into the meat of who you are and what you really want to do, and making sure you're separating other people's fears and voices that might sound like yours now in your head from your own, and being your most true self and not being limited to what other people think about you or feel about you. The third thing is challenge us to revisit areas in our life where we might have bowed out of things or feared things because of the assumptions, the fears, and the behaviors from others. People project their fears on us a lot. That's not new knowledge. People might hear that, oh, you're going to be doing this type of dance class? Like, are you going to be good at that? Whole time they feel like they wouldn't be good at it. Like, they have no clue at all if maybe your hips don't lie, but they, in their minds, know that their hips do lie, and they're afraid. So they're projecting that fear onto you. And as a pretty woman, you're going to get that a lot. People are going to project their own fears and hesitations onto you because part of them is intimidated by the idea that you have the confidence to go do things that they don't have the confidence to do. And like, it's an intimidation thing. Like, people feel very intimidated by you, so people, project their fears onto you sometimes. So that's the 3 reasons, understanding how all this stuff can, affect you and how you show up in spaces. I want to give you empowerment and knowledge to, enter these spaces at a different level of confidence and free flowing of yourself, being more open-minded about how you show up and what you can do with that. And then I want to challenge you to revisit areas in your life where you may have stepped away or bowed out of things because of other people's fears or assumptions or limited beliefs upon you. Maybe you're afraid of how you'll be perceived. Again, that's not something you're fearing. That's a perception that other people have projected onto you, and it's made you feel uncomfortable. But in your mind, you're like, this is still something I want to do. It's just like, people aren't going to be happy about it. But are you living your life to make other people happy, or are you living your life to make yourself happy? That is the question. So let's go ahead and hop in to our list. So we're going to first start with the limited beliefs and assumptions list that many people have about pretty privileged women. Now, the thing with this list of beliefs is that for some of them, there are some tangible examples of what this looks like. For other things, it's really a mindset that people have. And because of that mindset, there's a subset of things that these people are going to believe regarding you and, how you move throughout society. And some of these things might be true for you. Some of these things might not be true for you in terms of how even you perceive yourself or others around you. And I'd encourage you to really challenge yourself on these beliefs and understand if, having these beliefs is limiting your own perception and ability to really connect with yourself and who you are, as well as see people for the reality of who they are versus the versions of them that you have created in your mind based on the archetype. And a lot of these archetypes and beliefs and mindsets come from our encounters with different types of media and perceptions of groups of people and cohorts, on TV, or what we read, or kind of what we see is perpetuated in other larger social structures and systems like schools or work. So a lot of these things are like deeply just embedded in our society, as well as, being updated and like having more information applied to it based on the generation that we're in. And I think, you know, a lot of these things we'll see have been carried on throughout history, and they've remained pretty consistent. And that's because, for the most part, most humans subscribe to this belief so much so that they've built structures and reward systems and like punishment systems around these different things. So the first limited belief and assumption that people have is that pretty women are not talented. They can't be talented in addition to being beautiful or pretty. Oftentimes people assume that you only receive some sort of recognition or promotion, or you're only elevating in life simply because of how you look. It has nothing to do with your ability to actually step into this position and be effective as a leader, or your ability to assert yourself in a room and really get people's attention and get things going and moving. You're, you know, not really much of a driver that it would take to be in that. For some people, they think that because of your beauty and because they have an implied sense of understanding that most of the society gets handed to people based on how people perceive you and how you look to people, your appearance to people. And if you're attractive, most people are going to like trust you or think you're good or you're good natured. And that's called the halo effect, where people think that you're good natured simply based on how attractive you are. And it's an inherently unfair system and false system, because there are plenty of people who look good but like use that to other people's detriment and like to only to their benefit. They're very selfish people, and I don't think, you know, using your looks to get what you want makes you selfish, but I think if you do that to inherently do wrong by others and like be a person who has like, you know, a bad heart, then that's a problem. And then if we're going around thinking that just because someone looks a certain way that means they have good intentions, we're setting people up for failure, and we're setting people up to be misled and manipulated. So a lot of these people think that your looks got you to where you are, and not that you can be trusted or that you're actually capable of certain things and positions in life. And really what it is that these people fear you being more than just pretty, because they've already pedestalized beauty as something so important. So for you to have a gift on top of having your beauty, which they already view as a gift, you know, it's overwhelming. It intimidates them. And that's when people start to fall into this category of being intimidated by you. So much so that they will go out of their way to make degrading comments to you or take you down a notch or make you feel less than, simply because they're also kind of there in their own mindset. And the last thing they want is to feel like, oh, well, she just got it because she's pretty and she's not even qualified, versus, and oftentimes accepting the truth that maybe you are pretty, but you're also qualified for the role. It's not even just your looks that got you there. And I fully recognize that there are systems and places that do work out for people who are attractive, and that they do get benefits or promotions or things. Like there are plenty of workplaces that do that, places that hire the same looking people. You think about retail stores, like there's a certain look. There are all types of pretty privilege that people use to get things in life. And I think for people to just assume that like one person is using all their privileges to get something is completely false. Like you might flex your social privilege, which inherently is going to make you look a little bit more desirable to people, you know, having that like social order to you. So I think it's important to recognize that like all levels of privilege are exercised when people get into different roles or positions, or they get promoted or they get attention. Something is already inherently there in our system that makes it okay for that person to get that. It makes it wired for us to give them that, because we're all guilty of it in some way, shape, or form. You see somebody attractive, you turn around and you look at them a little bit, or you even got to convince yourself not to look because you shouldn't be looking. You know, so we have these inherent systems of value placed on things that show up and are perpetuated in both our behavior and even how we like judge our behavior sometimes. Like how I mentioned, you'll try to hold yourself from watching because you know inherently you want to, but now you're consciously like, but why would I do that? Am I subscribing to this belief that just because somebody looks like this, I should look at them? So that's just a little bit there. The other thing I want to talk about regarding, you know, talent and, you know, this limited belief that no, a pretty person can't be talented, and the assumptions. One of the assumptions is that a lot of these skills or things that people are doing requires intelligence. And for a woman to have all this beauty and be all this beautiful and stuff on top of having a talent, it's not possible. most of the time their beauty is their only skill set or only attribute. So it's seen as their only talent, and intelligence is not. Or if you think about it this way too, there are a lot of pieces of media that perpetuate the idea of this dumb blonde. And if we look at how a blonde white woman is pedestalized as like an epitome version of beauty, you know, she's soft, she's elegant, she's innocent. That innocence is always thrown in there. And then you look at these other examples of women who are intelligent, are in the room, do have a position a status in the room, but oftentimes they're dressed really quirky and not as like bodily attractive. They're not wearing the super tight fitted bodycon office dress, or, you know, she's wearing glasses that's hiding the frame of her face, or her hair, her bangs are shaped really weird and awkwardly. But she's intelligent, and you hear her making comments, and, you know, see her garnering either some jealousy from the men because who the hell does this woman think she is? Or you see other women who are like pretty, who are bullying her because they know that her intelligence gives her a place in the room that they could never fill because they don't have that attribute. Now, this may be some people, and, you know, both sides of this room exist. And the reason I say that it exists is because it's how our world is set up. And you can very well be one of the most brilliant people in the room and also be getting bullied. Not because you're stupid or there's anything else to bully you on, but simply because people are intimidated by you. Because 9 times out of 10, I'm sure if you were to like do your hair, wear something different, and dress in a more attractive way, you would garner the very attention that these people receive without your intelligence level. But because they don't have your intelligence level, now they're unable to execute real power and get shit done. Your beauty does give you power, does get you into the room, but I promise you, flexing that intelligence is really going to get you exactly what you need and where you need to be. Your intelligence is key to unlocking that. Your beauty is going to get you in the room, but I promise you, your beauty is not going to keep you there. Your intelligence has to keep you there. And I fully believe that on the channel because like myself included, and all of the, you know, strong, inspirational women I surround myself with. And when I say strong, I mean people who are so strong-willed and so locked into their mission to get shit done. You know, friends that I have that are taking different levels of school right now, really pushing, going into the workforce for myself, really pushing, really forging a path for myself in just a matter of 4 years. You know, I surround myself with these people because I know that, yes, our beauty may get us into the door. You know, that's a privilege that we flex consciously or subconsciously, but we know good and well that our beauty is not going to keep us there, that our intelligence will, that our intelligence is going to give us that much more credibility to get stuff done. And our beauty is simply going to garner attention from more and more people, more and more cohorts of people, to elevate us and get us all the crowdsourcing we need. So, you know, people often perceive beauty as a limit to intelligence. And once you know this, and you know that you have a good head on your shoulders, you know you can strategize and think strategically, you know you can get shit done, you use that to your benefit because now you know they're never seeing you come. They're never seeing you come into the room. They're never going to expect you. So use that to your benefit. And, you know, just as another concrete example of how society has perpetuated this perception of beautiful women and intelligent women as two separate archetypes, we can talk about Velma and Daphne. If you're familiar with Mystery Inc., Scooby-Doo, Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? You know who Velma and Daphne are. And for those of you who are not, which I feel like you'd have to be under a rock unless you're Generation Alpha. And no offense to you, y'all, but that's an OG cartoon. Y'all need to be watching that. It's a Cartoon Network original. And if you know about Scooby-Doo Snacks, like that came from that show that came from a comic book. And I'm not from the comic book era, but I am from the era of it being a Cartoon Network in the late, 90s, early 2000s. And let me tell you, Velma is brilliant. She's helping solve the crimes, the cases. Velma's doing her thing. And then you have Daphne. And Daphne also helps solve cases in terms of she's usually the one that's getting, chased or kidnapped by the culprit or the person that they're chasing after. But Daphne is the one who is, in that flirty stage of adolescence, She's dating Fred. Her and Fred have a thing, and Daphne's always perceived as just like this beautiful, attention garnering object of a woman. Now for Velma, Velma is like always off in the corner. She's solving things, she's getting stuff done, things are moving, primarily because Velma has the intelligence of a woman, but she needs the help of, the people on her team to execute things, because she's also sometimes very like, shy. But then you have Fred, who has like no intelligence at all, but he has like the scientific wit that's needed for them to do what they need to do. So he's able to execute things like as a man and bring that wit to the table. And then Shaggy, Scooby, they're just like, they're not so adventurous people, whatever, but they're always there and down for the adventure. And then Daphne has like the resources, and she's pretty, she's wealthy, she's always perceived as wealthy, which is another thing to keep in mind, because beauty and wealth are often very connected in media too. But Daphne is perceived as this wealthy, pretty girl, this great dad, great family, like very picture perfect. And Velma gets to like half shown visual of like she's just smart and she's quirky and she's not cute or attractive. So Scooby-Doo was created back in whenever, but mind you that there's been multiple productions of it and reiterations of it. And I'll ask you two questions. Which character is perceived as pretty and which character is perceived as intelligent? Why are they exclusive? And would it make necessary for these things to be exclusive for this perception of women to continue and for us to continuously have versions of it coming out? Because multiple versions of this show have been re-released and reproduced. It's been comic books, it's been movies, and we still see the same exact archetype kept for those two women. It has not changed. And if you think about movies like Mean Girls, or you think about other things like Devil Wears Prada, you think about all these different movies that are like sitting on that intersection between beauty and credibility and beauty and intelligence, and how once a woman or a young girl receives a makeover, she gets this social credibility. And on top of it, if she has the intelligence that she needs, she's able to build the empire she wants. All things to keep in mind and be aware of, because that's exactly how our world operates, both in the workforce and academia, just in social circles, in real life, our church communities, our like social club, where we go to gyms, like people creditate beauty, but they will often discredit women from intelligence. Remember that. So you'll be credited for your beauty, but no, as soon as that happens, most times they've also discredited you from intelligence. So you'll catch them off guard when you really use your intelligence to, win some influence in the room and push past the boundaries and walls and boxes that they've given you as a woman. And finally, the last piece on this is just, I want to call out and caution the fact that all of this is just related to how there's a general disrespect of femininity. And femininity is often, associated with like its softness and like flowiness and airiness, which nothing is wrong with that. But why are we disconnecting that from intelligence and awareness and having emotional intelligence? Why do people insult beautiful women saying, oh, you're smarter than how you look? Or making underhanded comments to, insinuate that you're a conundrum because you're not just talented or skilled at one thing, but you have multiple things going for you. And why is my beauty an inherent talent or skill when it's just something I'm born with or born into? So this is one limited belief that you have probably seen, happen a lot around people, making comments about you. Very uncomfortable comments, I imagine, because all these things have made me feel very uncomfortable when someone mentions just like, oh, how intelligent I am, but like they weren't expecting it. Or someone makes a comment insinuating that like I'm a conundrum, or they're so shocked that I'm capable of doing XYZ. And in my mind, I'm always like, well, what made you think I couldn't do X, Y, and Z? Like, especially if it's like my job or something I'm hired for, this is definitely something I should be capable of doing, not a situation where I can't do it unless you were to hold my hand and show me. And that's something I struggle with a lot. And my corporate job is finding that right balance to strike and just make moves on my own versus wait and play the observation game, because you do have to know your environment and the people that you're studying as much as possible before making any rash decisions. And for me, when I'm playing this game with a lot of different women who are intimidated by me, but they also have power to, make or break my career at such a, unique stage that I'm at, I definitely have to look at this with a little bit more intentionality and strategy to it. And I have to be aware of just how the social structure is set up anyway. I could complain all day about how it's not fair and I wish skill was just all that mattered and like people didn't feel like they had to, put blockades on you just because of your beauty, but it's how people operate. It's so many implied things in how we do our day to day in this world, this Western world, that a lot of this stuff is just how we operate. So I'd rather you know the game, understand it, and then use it to your benefit. The next thing that many people believe and assume about pretty privileged women is that we're only extroverts. So in their minds, us being introverted just is not normal and it's not right. Oftentimes this can lead to people forcing themselves to match the energy of a room and not being honest to who they are. And I want to first caution here from anyone thinking that, oh, there's an inherently specific social battery level you should have as a pretty woman. Like you should be a complete extrovert or you should be a complete introvert. No, there's no inherent one that's better than the other or that's right for you over the other. It really matters on who you are and your personality. So agnostic of you being beautiful, like what is your social capacity for people? Do you need to be around people every single weekend to feel recharged, to feel plugged in? Or do you need a moment to yourself? Do you need to be more observant and just like have that space and still feel confident in it? Because oftentimes I think there's a negative connotation sent to introverts that we're quiet, cold, and calculated. But oftentimes I think we're just, quiet, intentional, and, strategic. That's how I think about it. I'm very strategic and selective. I would even take away quiet, very observant, selective, and intentional with my interactions. I'm going to only exert and invest where I believe it's going to benefit me and that other person. And also, everything doesn't deserve a response. And at the same time, I'm so confident in that mindset that if an extrovert said those same things to me, I'm not offended by it. I think the two can coexist. We need our extroverts just as much as our introverts. As an introvert, I need an environment to observe. So the extrovert is usually going to be the person, talking the most in that environment. That'll be the person who garners my attention the most because they're the loudest, or not the loudest, but they're the most vocal person at that point in time. Now, there may come a day when I decide to say something around this extrovert, and for that extrovert, they love social energy and interaction. So, like, I'm adding to them and their plate. And for me, now I get to, join in on a reflective conversation with somebody after I've observed them for however long and I've understood some things. And for some people, that might seem like, oh my God, you're like overthinking it, just interact with people. And it's like, no, you got to think some of these settings might be like a 15-minute thing, or like I'm walking past somebody and passing at work. Like all these things aren't interactions where I need to make myself super loud and vocal so people know every single card in my deck. I don't need to show all my cards. I need to show what cards are most important for that moment. That's going to progress to the next stage for me to continue to show cards that are necessary for this relationship. But I'm not going to show everybody everything because everybody isn't worth knowing every single thing about me. And that's how I think about it as an introvert. And I know for extroverts, I don't know actually because I'm not an extrovert, but like I know they have their reasons for being an extrovert. So I'm encouraging you, beautiful, pretty woman, to be true to yourself about where you're at social battery wise and stay there. And I'm calling that out because as a pretty woman, if you feel this pressure to always be on 10 and be an extrovert, it can lead to people pleasing tendencies. And you could be forcing yourself into so much emotional like manipulation of like, I have to be here for other people, like emotional pressure of trying to match what perceptions you believe people have about you. Because I guarantee you that you can probably picture, the negative comments that will come from you owning who you are if you're more of an introvert, or owning who you are if you're more of an extrovert. I've heard negative things for both sides. For some extroverts, they get called out as being loud, being the loudest in the room, being the rah-rah person. But then for more introverts, they get told, oh, you're standoffish, you're bougie, you acting cold. Like So there's going to be a negative side to both. I'm going to say you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, because for some reason society like has us on a spectrum and makes one bad versus the other, versus we can all just be wherever we're at and be around the right people who let us, flex those social batteries as comfortably as we want to. But that's not how the world works, not how it thinks all the time. Not everybody who's, not everyone gets this frame of thinking. And so I encourage you to know where you stand on it and be true to that, and know that there's no inherent way that's better than the other. You just need to pick the way that makes sense for you. And that's what makes it better, is that it works for you and who you are. And it'll be so many different settings you'll see that just, place type of pressure on you. It could be corporate settings, it could be academia, it could be friend groups sometimes. Some people actually look to you to be like the leader, be the voice. And that might be flattering for some people. It might be like, well, no, like, think for yourself. It really just depends on, what your goals are and who you are and the type of people you want to be around. Do you want to be around people that bring out your alpha? Or do you want to be around people who let you sort of be the fly on the wall and observe, and you step in when it's time for you to share some wisdom or something like that? So, another limited belief and assumption is that as a pretty woman, your out loud confidence means that you are arrogant and that you think you're superior to other people and that you're basically putting down other people's beauty. So the implied belief here is that many people believe if you're beautiful and attractive, you immediately come with confidence. It's so hard for some people to wrap their minds around people who are really beautiful, drop dead gorgeous, or I don't want to say drop dead, people who are really beautiful, very, very gorgeous, yet they don't believe that they're beautiful, or they don't walk with a certain, walk to them where it makes them seem like, oh, they're trying to command attention to the room. Like, they don't behave the way other people would quote unquote behave if they had their type of beauty. And I see this a lot from, women who consider themselves unattractive, women who will be put in that category, who feel like, oh my gosh, like, girl, if I had your hips or I had your face or I had your hair, like, I would be doing this, this, and that. Like, people talk about all these different forms of privilege that if they had it, they would act a different way. So, of course, from there, we can also imply that when you do have those types of privileges and you do say something or do something a certain way, people are going to assume that this is what you meant. So if you're a confident person, so in their mind, the perfect world, someone is really pretty and beautiful, so naturally they have confidence. And we know they have confidence because we're telling them in our minds, we know you have confidence. But if that same pretty person comes around me and is talking about, oh my gosh, girl, like, I love my hair, like, my hair pattern, my hair curl pattern is perfect, like, this is beautiful, this is what I'm talking about, this is real beauty on me. Someone says all of that, that is going to come off like, okay, why are you being arrogant like that? Okay, like, we know you're pretty, you're pretty, but whole time this could be a scenario. Now think of it from the pretty woman's perspective. Maybe she doesn't really think these things about herself, but she's in a space, in a journey in her life where she is saying affirmations in the present tense to really put herself there. She's really speaking life into herself to help herself get to a point where she's like, I'm beautiful in these ways, I love myself in these ways. But for somebody that is not where she's at and has the implied belief system that, oh, every pretty person has confidence, when they hear that, they're like, why is she doing too much? And I've personally experienced this before. I was a little, drunk, tipsy, having fun out with some friends, and I started commenting on just like my eyes. I started complimenting on my clothes, what I was wearing, and my body or something. And I also commented on my skin. Like I said, I really, really love my skin. And none of what I was saying was ever in comparison to anybody else. In fact, I was in the mirror by myself alone while they were off on the other side of the room, and I was just vibing to the music and talking out loud, gassing myself in it, affirming myself, which I would do normally as a part of my morning routine. I have my own like deck of cards, and I pull cards and I say affirmations, and I look myself, in the mirror, and I say these things, and I'm very intentional about it. And for somebody who doesn't know where I'm at with my own journey of like affirming things, to say it, speak it, believe it so that it's here, they're seeing it as, oh, she's pretty, and then she's saying this stuff out loud, and she's saying that she likes this on her. That's the other part. Because you said you like something, And as a pretty woman, sometimes people put your word on like a pedestal. What you say goes. So if I say that I liked a certain something on me and that person doesn't have it, but that person values the type of beauty I have, they're like, she's saying she likes this thing and this thing is right. And since I don't have that thing, I can't be in the right. I can't be in her eyes beautiful. That's how they're reading it. That I said that this is the only thing that's beautiful. And it's because one, they desire something that I have, and two, I called it out and affirmed that this is what I have that I like about myself. So they're like, damn, I don't have that. So yeah, oftentimes you could be seen as, arrogant. You can't be happy or feel good about yourself in the presence of these people who want to have your beauty all along, but they're okay making comments about it, putting it on a pedestal. But if you ever were to say something, they think you're putting it on a double pedestal, that you're overdoing it. They'll call you out saying you're using, different isms, you're being colorist, you're being texturous. A lot of this stuff will get called out, and no. So it's definitely important to know that you're going to be called out for one of these isms if you do make it really vocal, what it is about yourself that you're finding desirable on you. And, other examples of this is like it's cross-generational sometimes, where people are so bitter and so locked into, believing that their own sense of beauty is not matching the beauty standard that they have. And that's so real and deep, because there will be a lot of bitter older women who will basically come and try to dump on younger girls, younger, young ladies who are in that era of really embracing themselves and loving their beauty, and they're embracing it a lot differently now, and so much more explicitly too. Like even just, the sexuality, sexual promiscuity, movement, and like seeing how people like Sexy Red and Megan Thee Stallion have become so, popular and, placed as these public figures that are kind of having their hand on the pulse of what it means to be a mentally healthy, sexually active woman. Like that's the best way I can put it in technical political terms. But yeah, just like this woman who's super sex positive and body positive. There we go. She's super sexually and bodily positive about herself. She owns it. She can't be shamed for it. Sort of taking back the power of a name like slut or hoe and making it into something that seems more empowering. And of course, it's shocking for so many, older generation women, because they're like, what the heck are you talking about? Because they have so many just like deeply embedded, value systems in their mind to certain words. And the same thing goes for just how people's behaviors are, like over time. Doing any of those things that are showboaty have always been seen as like, oh, you think you're better than somebody. And I think that's just like a cultural thing too, with Black people like us not wanting somebody to fully feel at their best. Like we still want them to be at our level of mental struggle and unhappiness, and until we really love ourselves and really want the best for ourselves, so much so that we know us being at our best is going to put the people around us at a good place, we'll never reach that point. And so sometimes I really feel like that's the case with a lot of these bitter old women archetypes that are kind of coming in and, telling these young girls, dim your light down. And then you have the opposite, where they're telling you not to dim it. Like people who are like, no, I wish I would have known that I was in my baddest era when I was 24 so I could live that up. So you got to really like let people show you and tell you who they are with that. And you use that to your benefit. Like if these people are going to look at you that way, and you're on a pedestal in their minds, like what could you do with that type of power? Like be real. So that was all for the limited beliefs and assumptions that a lot of people have towards pretty privileged women. And now I'm going to jump in and talk about one objectification behavior that people do a lot of times when they are in your presence. And this kind of touches on something I mentioned earlier with just like, your confidence and stuff. People are okay commenting on your appearance because they, in their minds, are like, you should get that praise, that garnering that attention. But oftentimes people will freely comment. This is the behavior now. People will freely comment and instigate controversial or uncomfortable topics related to your appearance. And this can be both in your presence and not in your presence. And usually, if it's not in your presence, somebody tells you. And that should also give you some information. It's just like when people tell you these things, it gives you some keen insight to like, well, I wonder why like they would tell this person this thing. And what you'll notice is like for some people, they throw out little fish hooks to see if you would also like gauge with their belief, engage with their like, gossip, like, oh, this person, has this type of ancestor in their bloodline. So like, of course they have this thing going on. And that's kind of like people's way to like fish and see where you with that. So be cautious of that. And oftentimes when people do make these comments in your presence, they're also fishing to see what's your response. So the whole point of this behavior and action is that people are fishing to see what the pulse is in the room, to understand where other people are with this, so they know who to form alliances with, who to form, opposing sides with. I really think that's what this is. Like, this is a psychological war strategy that people use in a room when they don't know people that well, even outside the context of just like how we treat pretty people, but in the context of like how we approach people. We talk about topics around politics or race or money. People throw out feelers to see who's going to catch. And based on how you catch, they know that they can talk to you later on, and they know they can gossip with you later on. So sometimes people are going to make these really controversial and uncomfortable topics in your presence. And in this scenario, they want to know if you are problematic and you think that way, or they want to know if that you're, pretty, and or you got this going on with your appearance or one of your phenotype characteristics. They do this so that they can understand how aware you are of you, so they know, okay, this person might be somebody I could manipulate to get what I want out of them, or this might be a person I could be friends with. Like, they don't think this way. This person doesn't exercise any of these isms. The main thing here is that, it's not a good feeling for someone to be too comfortable, one, discussing something related to you, and discussing these things in a way where like they are telling you that, oh, like you got this thing on you, and that's just because your grandma was white. Like, they want to see what you're gonna say, because they want to know if you also are gonna participate in that like internal racial hate egging on. And when you don't, you might upset them. They might be like relieved that you don't. It really depends on the person. But oftentimes I just recall feeling really uncomfortable when people make comments on things regarding my appearance, where if I knew I responded in the conversation, it would lead to me being accused of different isms that I'm not guilty of, but that because other people are guilty of it and I would benefit from that ism, I have a responsibility in their minds to like make that decline, to fight that justice war. Even though I didn't choose it, I don't agree with it, because I benefit from it, I have a implied responsibility that I should not engage in it, or I should be trying to combat the people who do. And the example for this I'll give is, I was with a group of girls, and most of them were darker skin in the room, and racially unambiguous, Black women. And for me, like I mentioned, I can pass. I look very different depending on how my hair is, depending on like what I'm wearing, whatever room I'm in. Like, I can transform a little bit, and that just comes from me being a Black woman and like styling my hair in different ways. And then also just my features and my genetics and all that. So there will be certain places that I go and I can't control how other people perceive me, because sometimes it even takes me off guard when people like ask me if I'm not just what it's surprising when people ask if I am mixed. Initially it did, but now I understand. Especially I understand like moving into these different social circles and these different social classes of people. I see how your appearance and your hair and all that really weighs into how they treat you. But the conversation that we were having was regarding NBA players. And a lot of Black men in the NBA do marry white women. And that's an issue for a lot of Black women. And me personally, I don't care what another Black man does with his balls, both literally and metaphorically on the court, has nothing to do with me. That is not my man. And if he's pursuing women that are his preference, he has every right to do so. I don't think vocalizing it and the way that it's vocalized is very helpful for men to just have their preferences. And I do think that the way some men vocalize it and have their preferences is also very much rooted in internal hate. I'm not disagreeing with that. I think that colorism is very real in the Black community, especially when it comes to how we date. And I'm, vetted on this because when I study sociology, I love jumping into systems like I mentioned, and I love studying like dating patterns and how different certain racial groups were in a certain place based on their race. And when it comes to NBA players, a lot of them date white women or date women who are of lighter tones. If they're not just white, they might be mixed or something, or Black. They're making a comment about how not the non light skinned women in the room were making a comment about how they would not be pursued, how they would be treated like a monkey, and all these other like degrading racial terms that they were calling out for themselves. And I just remember like feeling really uncomfortable in the room because one, I was aware of the difference between us and that it probably was going to come up soon because it's not the first time I've heard something like this before. And you just know when something's going to be said that makes you uncomfortable. And then also because I'm thinking to myself, like, as women, if we know that's how some people are going to operate, why should we even be putting energy into that? Why should we even be speaking those things over ourselves? Or why should they be speaking those things over themselves? Like, why put energy into people who you know aren't going to feel about you a certain type of way, and you're egging it on, and now you're speaking spells on yourself? And as I mentioned earlier, I do a lot of affirmation work and just speaking things into existence. So I'm taking this very intentionally and cautiously because I'm like, what's going on? Dodging words is being spoken across the room. So, you'll hear a lot of backlash from Black women towards lighter skinned women about how they need to not participate and not, benefit from the colorism that they benefit from. But at the end of the day, I understand it from the perspective of women who are, being chosen and being pursued and being selected in these, relationships, because it is a relationship, and I'm sure it's not fully just transactional based on, oh, you're this color, so let me marry you. Like, there's so many other things. For some men, appearance is that much more important, down to the detail of her skin color. And no, that's not right, because he can be with the right person who's just literally the wrong, like, who's not the shade that he desires. Let me not say wrong, but he's could be in love with a person, but she does not have the shade that he desires. Like, if that is something so important to him, there's nothing that's going to change his mind. Like, nothing that she could do, and she has to like be okay with that and know that that means that that's not the person for her, because the person for you will want every single thing about you. And so we have to stop like expecting all men to conform to wanting just one archetype of Black woman, because they can want any archetype of Black woman that they want. It's really about how they vocalize it. And also it's to a point where like they only vocalize so much about light-skinned women that when they vocalize about other shades of women, no, we don't say anything's wrong with it, because we think that's inherently the solution to them verbalizing the other women. But I think if there was equal voicing that both complexions are equally desired, this wouldn't be an issue. Because a lot of colorism is rooted in people being super male-centered and being centered on male attention and the male gaze and getting male approval and being chosen. And if we really took dating out of it, I think a lot of conversations on colorism would expand into something a little bit more fruitful, other than you're his type, sis, and I'm upset about that. Like, we just need to make that conversation a little bit more colorful, other than how men are desiring us, because like, I just feel like we're missing out on so many friendships out here because people are so focused on men and men valuing them a certain way versus them realizing their value and moving accordingly. So that was all for this video. I thank you guys so much for listening and tuning in. Definitely comment and engage below, like this video, and subscribe. And definitely sign up for those notifications so you know when the next video comes out. I'm really excited to continue this journey with you guys, and have a great one until I talk to you again. Bye.